All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are going deep on a figure I think it's safe to say pretty much everyone knows, Donald Trump. We are talking about the man, the myth, the Donald. And we're going to try and go a little deeper than the headlines, right?
Right.
We have excerpts from Trump's Wikipedia page, and let me tell you, it's extensive. I mean, we're talking everything from his childhood to his business career to obviously the presidency and even post-presidency. So we're really going to try to pull out some of the more surprising, more interesting, maybe even a little contradictory elements from his life.
I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, I think so too. A lot to unpack. So let's start at the very beginning. Now, it's no secret that Trump came from money.
Yeah.
From a wealthy family. In fact, according to the Wiki page, he was already a millionaire by the age of 8.
Wow.
In today's dollars. I mean, that's a level of privilege most of us just, can't fathom.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you think, what impact do you think that kind of upbringing had on him?
Well, I think growing up in that world, right, New York real estate, his father, already a very successful developer, I think it instilled in him a certain level of confidence, right? Maybe, perhaps, even a little bit of a sense of entitlement. And I think you could say that those traits are evident throughout his entire career.
Oh, yeah.
Both business and political.
It's interesting you say that because one of the things that jumped out to me was that he attended military school. Now, on the surface, that might seem, like a normal path for someone from a wealthy, privileged background. Right?
You would think.
But then it mentions on his Wikipedia page that he actually threatened legal action to prevent the release of his academic records from that time.
Interesting.
What do you make of that?
Well, it certainly makes you wonder what he was so set on keeping private.
Right.
Was it a fear of scrutiny? Was it a desire to control his narrative?
Right.
It's an interesting little puzzle piece that adds to his mystique, I think.
I think so too. Now, before we get into his political life, we have to talk about his business ventures.
Right.
He inherits his father's business, pretty quickly makes a name for himself in Manhattan real estate. But then there's this whole other side to him, right? The casinos, the beauty pageants, and of course, The Apprentice, which really catapulted him to a whole new level of, I guess you could say, fame.
Oh, yeah.
Celebrity.
Totally.
So what do you make of, how do you think that those experiences shaped him?
Well, I think that's where he really honed his skills as a showman.
Right.
He was a master of self-promotion, branding. He understood the power of entertainment and how to captivate an audience. And I think, those skills proved to be incredibly valuable when he decided to enter politics.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of politics, we have to talk about Trumpism. It's a term that has become synonymous with his particular brand of politics.
Right, right.
But what exactly does it encompass, and how did it come to define, I guess, a movement, right?
Well, it is a very complex mix of ideas, of sentiments. But I think his Wikipedia page points to a couple of key elements. He was skeptical of global institutions, things like NATO. He had a real belief in protectionist trade policies, and this real focus on America first.
Right.
And those ideas really resonated with voters who, I think, were feeling disillusioned with the political establishment and who saw him as a disruptor.
And he did.
Yeah.
His campaign promises were pretty out there too, right? Renegotiating trade deals like NAFTA, cracking down on immigration, achieving energy independence.
Yeah.
He really tapped into this sense of economic anxiety, I think some cultural grievance as well,
Right.
and of course the "Make America Great Again" slogan,
Yeah.
which became this rallying cry for his supporters.
Sure.
Now, while that message did resonate with, I think, a significant portion of the electorate, his rhetoric also went beyond traditional political discourse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
His statements on immigration, for example, were, I think, widely criticized as divisive, as inflammatory.
Oh, yeah.
Accusing undocumented immigrants of being criminals,
Right.
calling for a wall to be built along the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah, and that really.
Wouldn't you say that hardline stance on immigration became a real defining feature of his presidency?
Absolutely. And it wasn't just rhetoric, right? It was reflected in concrete policies, things like the zero tolerance policy that led to family separations at the border.
Oh, yeah.
Which, that sparked outrage domestically and internationally.
And then there's the wall itself.
Yeah.
which almost became this symbolic representation of his whole approach to immigration, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, he even triggered the longest government shutdown in U.S. history over funding for it. So, I mean, you could say that he was pretty determined to make that a reality.
Yeah, he was committed to his campaign promises, that's for sure.
Even in the face of fierce opposition.
Yeah.
I mean, which again, some people admired and others saw as a sign of just pure inflexibility.
Right, unwillingness to compromise.
So from real estate mogul to reality TV star to the most powerful office in the world, I mean, his journey to White House was certainly unconventional.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
But once he got there, how did that unconventional approach play out on the world stage? Let's take a look at his foreign policy.
Okay.
His foreign policy, that was certainly one of the most talked about aspects of his presidency, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You had the trade war with China, the summits with Kim Jong-un, pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, it was a whirlwind of activity.
Constant headlines.
Yeah, very unpredictable, always generating headlines, for sure.
And I think it's really important to remember that Trump came into office with a real skepticism of globalization,
Right.
of multilateralism.
Right.
He really saw those as forces that hurt American workers, that undermine U.S. sovereignty. So he took this much more transactional approach, bilateral, often using tariffs and sanctions as leverage in negotiations.
And his approach to China, I think, is a perfect example of that. He accused them of unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, slapped tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods.
Yeah. I mean, and that sparked a trade war that really had ripple effects throughout the global economy.
Oh, yeah.
And there were some who argued that tough stance was absolutely necessary to push back against China.
Right.
China's growing influence.
Economically, geopolitically.
Right, exactly. But others criticized it as counterproductive, saying that it actually harmed American businesses and consumers.
Right, right. But then you also had these moments where he seemed to praise Xi Jinping, calling him a great leader, expressing admiration for his I guess you could say grip on power.
It was a very personalized approach to diplomacy, I think.
Yeah.
It really relied heavily on these personal relationships, on deal making, and I think it often left people wondering, what were his true intentions.
Absolutely. And then there were the summits with Kim Jong-un, which those were truly unprecedented.
Oh, yeah.
No sitting U.S. president had ever met face-to-face with the North Korean leader before.
Yeah, those were they were very theatrical. Lots of photo ops, lots of pronouncements of friendship. But in terms of concrete progress, the results I think were pretty limited.
Right, right. And then there's the withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, which he had long criticized, called it a terrible deal.
Right.
Argued that it didn't do enough to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions, that it lifted sanctions prematurely.
And that was a very controversial decision.
Oh, yeah.
Many argued that it actually undermined efforts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, that it destabilized the region.
Right.
And it really strained relations with European allies.
Right, who were still party to the agreement.
Exactly.
So on the foreign policy front, it was kind of a mixed bag. You had bold moves, you had these unpredictable pronouncements, and ultimately, I think, some questionable outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the domestic scene, because his presidency was also marked by a series of controversies and investigations.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the most significant, I think, in terms of its lasting impact, was the investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election.
Right.
The Mueller investigation. That really cast a long shadow over his presidency, don't you think?
Absolutely. It was this highly charged political drama. It gripped the nation for over 2 years.
Yeah.
And Special Counsel Robert Mueller was tasked with investigating, Russian efforts to interfere in the election, and then also any potential coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia.
And ultimately, the investigation didn't find sufficient evidence to establish a criminal conspiracy, right?
Right.
Between the Trump campaign and Russia. But it did outline 10 instances of potential obstruction of justice by Trump.
Yeah, and that raised some serious questions about whether, Trump had abused his power
Right.
to try to impede the investigation, and it ultimately led to his first impeachment by the House of Representatives.
That first impeachment was a historic moment.
Yeah.
And it stemmed from his dealings with Ukraine.
Mm.
He was accused of pressuring Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate his political rival Joe Biden while withholding military aid.
Yeah, I mean, that was seen by many as a clear abuse of power.
Yeah.
Right, using the office of the presidency for personal political gain.
Right.
And the House did impeach him on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, but the Senate acquitted him on both charges.
But the impeachment saga didn't end there. He was impeached again just weeks before leaving office for inciting the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol.
Right, January 6th, 2021.
His words and actions in the lead-up to that attack, where a mob of his supporters stormed the Capitol.
Trying to overturn the election results?
Yeah, I mean, that was seen by many as a direct assault on American democracy.
Absolutely.
This time, he was impeached by the House on a single charge of incitement of insurrection. But again, he was acquitted by the Senate.
Yeah.
So even though he was acquitted in both impeachment trials, they left this mark, right,
For sure.
on his presidency.
Deep political divisions.
Yeah, and really highlighted the deep political divisions in the country. And even after leaving office, I mean, he's continued to be this force in American politics.
Oh, yeah.
With this loyal base of supporters and a real knack for staying in the headlines. I mean, his post-presidency has been anything but quiet, right?
Oh, for sure.
He's faced multiple legal challenges, continued to make claims about the 2020 election, and really remained a powerful voice within the Republican Party.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unprecedented when you think about it. You have a former president who, is facing all these investigations, these indictments, and he still manages to hold on to this grip on a significant portion of the electorate.
It's pretty remarkable. And one of the most significant legal challenges he's faced stems from that FBI investigation into his handled and classified documents.
Yeah.
After leaving office,
Right.
the Wikipedia page details how they found all these boxes of White House records at his Mar-a-Lago residence, some of which were marked as classified.
Yeah, and that led to a federal indictment, pretty serious charges, violating the Espionage Act, making false statements, obstruction of justice. I mean, it's a big deal, right? It really raises questions about, how we handle sensitive information, the rule of law.
And it's not the only legal battle he's been dealing with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's also faced charges related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results, including the events leading up to January 6th.
And those cases, they just further fuel this political divide in the country. You have his supporters who see it as a witch hunt, political motivated, and then you have his detractors who view it as absolutely necessary to hold him accountable.
And throughout all of this, he's continued to perpetuate this claim that the 2020 election was stolen, the big lie, as it's been called.
Right.
What impact do you think that has had on American politics?
I mean, I think it's been incredibly damaging. These persistent claims of election fraud, despite all the evidence to the contrary, it's really eroded trust in our institutions, and it's fueled this dangerous movement of election denial.
Yeah, it's really concerning to see how this misinformation has taken root and how it continues to shape the political landscape.
It's a reminder, I think, of just how fragile democracy really is, and the importance of having this shared understanding of facts and truth.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Donald Trump, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, right? From his childhood wealth to his time in the White House to his ongoing impact on American politics. What are some of your key takeaways? What really stands out to you as the most surprising or the most significant aspects of his story?
I mean, I think for me, it's just his ability to defy expectations, right? To really rewrite the rules of American politics. He's a figure who's consistently challenged norms, broken precedents, and really tapped into this well of resentment and discontent.
Yeah, he's a master of self-promotion, of branding. He's a showman. he understands the power of spectacle
Mm.
and how to connect with a certain segment of the electorate.
Absolutely. And I think, he's left this mark on the country that we're going to continue to debate and analyze for years to come.
Yeah, it's a reminder, I think, of the complexities of American politics, the power of personality, the power of populism, and the importance of critical thinking, especially in the face of so much misinformation.
For sure.
Well, that's our deep dives into the world of Donald Trump. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your takeaways? What questions are you left with? Let us know.